and welcome back to Plating It with Wendy, where I share with you recipes which impress with ease. Today we're going to be making a festive bread pudding that's loaded with nuts and dry fruits. I'm sure you're going to love this one, so let's get started. Let's start by prepping the bread. For this recipe, we're going to go in with 4 slices of bread, and we're going to cut off the edges, and we're going to keep right to the edge so that we do not waste too much of the bread. Now, if you want, you could always toast these edges up and then put them into your mixer and grind them fine so that you get nice homemade breadcrumbs. Alternatively, you could also keep them on, but I prefer cutting them off. Now, the approximate weight of the bread after we cut off the edges is going to be about 100 grams. We're going to cut this up into smaller cubes. Just going to go in with making them into 4 strips first. And then we're going to turn it around and cube it. So we're going to go in with 4 strips this way as well. I'm going to put this into a bowl and keep it for later. Now this is also a good recipe for using up leftover bread. Now we're going to boil up some milk. So I'm adding 2 cups, which is approximately 500 ml of milk to a heavy bottom pot. And to sweeten it up, we're going to add 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons of granulated white sugar. Now we're going to switch on the heat and allow it to come to a boil. But since we've added some sugar into it, we're going to stir it occasionally so that the milk doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot. This should take approximately about 5 minutes. When making this pudding, I like to go in with a full fat milk because it makes the pudding more creamy. Now that it's bubbling, we're going to take it off the heat. Now to the hot milk, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of unsalted butter. We're just going to stir it around till it melts. And this is going to add to the flavor of the pudding. Now if you don't have unsalted butter and you want to use salted butter, you could always do that. Just reduce the amount of salt that you're adding into the pudding later. And while the milk is still warm, we're going to add in all the cubed bread. And the bread is going to absorb the milk and the butter like a sponge. We're going to press it down so that the bread gets soaked in the milk. Now into that we're going to add some warm flavors. So I've taken 2 green cardamoms, and we're just going to take out the skin first. Putting only the seeds back. And now we're going to grind it to a fine powder. And now we're going to add some of that to the pot. We're also going to add in some freshly grated nutmeg and a pinch of ground cinnamon. Let's mix that together. We're going to keep this aside to cool down while we beat up the eggs. Now to bind the pudding together, we're going to go in with 2 eggs. Just going to add it into this jug. And for a creamy custard, we're going to go in with 2 egg yolks. We're going to add 1 in there. Okay, and now we're going to add the second egg yolk. Now to the eggs, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. And I'm going to eyeball that here. Now let's beat that up and break the eggs down. Now let's add the eggs to the soaked bread. Pour that in all around. And using our spatula, we're going to mix it all together. Just going to press down on the bread. We don't want it to be too smooth because we're putting the fruits in it, and the bread is going to help to keep the fruits distributed in the pudding. You don't have to worry that the mixture is not smooth right now, because once we steam it, it's all going to bind together and it's going to be amazing. Now let's keep this aside and chop up our dry fruits. To add a festive touch to our bread pudding, we're going to add 15 grams of Craisins, 15 grams of Pistachios, 15 grams of Raisins, and 15 grams of Cashew Nuts. And we're just going to cut them down a little bit so that it becomes easier to cut the bread pudding and we get a pop of color in every slice. Now you can use whatever dried fruits you have handy at home. So putting it back into the bowl. Chop up the pistachios. I like how vibrant the color of the pistachios are, and it's going to make the pudding look very Christmassy along with the deep red color of the craisins. Before cutting them, make sure to soak the pistachios in some hot water to take out the skins. And I'm going to chop up the raisins as well. Just going to make them into halves. You want a little bit of the goodness in every slice. And now let's chop up the cashew nuts as well. Now that they're all cut, let's mix them up together. That's the pistachios, the craisins, the raisins, and the cashew nuts. And now let's give them a mix. Wow, look at those colors. It's Cream's Christmas. Now let's keep this aside and go and make the caramel. To make the caramel, in a heavy bottom pan, we're going to add 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons of white granulated sugar. And to that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of water and just a dash of lemon juice. And this is going to prevent the crystallization of the sugar when it melts. And we're going to give it a quick stir. And then we're going to let it melt and do its thing on a medium heat. Occasionally, you can swirl it around and then put it back on the heat. I'm not sure whether the camera is picking it up, but you can see it's already turning a light amber color over here. We want it to be a darker amber color, so we're going to keep lifting it up, shaking it around, and putting it back on the heat till it caramelizes and we get the desired color. You don't want to make it too dark because then it's going to get a bittery taste. So you want it somewhere in a medium shade. It's almost done. I think that color is looking perfect for me. So I'm going to switch off the heat, and immediately you're going to pour it into your container in which you're making the pudding. And you want it to be a heat-proof container. And you're going to swirl it till you cover the base of the container. I'm using a 6-inch cake pan here. Just going to roll it around so that we get an even distribution of the caramel at the base. And that's looking good. Now we're going to leave it aside to set for a little bit. So that we get an even distribution of the dry fruits, we're going to layer the pudding. So we're first going to ladle in 2 spoonfuls of the pudding mix. Just distribute it at the bottom. And now we're going to add some of those dried fruits on the top of that. We're going to put about half of it because we're going to do it in 2 layers. Now let's ladle on another 2 spoonfuls, or maybe 3.
You can do it the regular way too.
I think we'll put 1 more spoonful here. And now we're going to add in the second lot of the dry fruits. Once again, we're just going to sprinkle them on the top. This way you're going to be sure that the fruits get evenly distributed in the pudding. And now we're going to ladle on the rest of the pudding mix. Put it down very gently so that we do not upset the layers that we have created. Now let's cover the pudding up with an aluminum foil before we steam it. Now we're going to be steaming our pudding, and I'm going to show you a very easy way of doing it. All you have to do is take a deep pot, and into that add 2 kitchen paper towels. And on top of that, you're going to pour some water. And you're going to fill as much water as you require for it to come halfway up your pudding mold. So we're first going to cover it up and allow the water to heat before we put the pudding in. Now that the water is heated up, we're going to place our pudding on top of the kitchen paper towel. And we're going to close the pot with the lid once again. And now we're going to steam the pudding till it has set. And that should take approximately 45 to 50 minutes. It's been about 45 minutes since the pudding has been steaming. So let's check whether it's ready. I'm just going to use some kitchen tongs here and lift up the foil. Be very careful when doing this because you don't want the steam coming on you. Oh yes, look at that. It's set very well. Now we're going to take it off the heat. Now we're going to allow the pudding to cool and come to room temperature. Then we're going to cover it up and put it into the refrigerator for 2 hours before we unmold it. It's been about 2 hours since the pudding has been chilling in the refrigerator. So now let's go ahead and unmold it. I'm going to use a small spatula to ease out the edge right around the pudding, but you could also use a knife if you wanted. Since the spatula is thinner, it's easier to get it between the cake tin and the pudding, and it also will give you a smoother edge. Now we're going to take our prettiest plate and put it on the top face side down And we're going to flip it over. And now we're going to give it a few taps on the top just to help to ease it out. And then you want to give it a few taps on the countertop too. And now watch it come out. Now let's cut a piece to enjoy. Oh my goodness! Look at that! See how smooth the texture is? And I love that speckle of the fruit all over the pudding. And before we give the bread pudding a taste, if you enjoy trying out recipes that turn out right every time and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, go ahead, press that subscribe button, and while you're at it, if you hit the bell icon, you'll be the first to get notified every time I upload a new video. And now, let's give our bread pudding a taste. Wow, it's looking so delicious. I can't wait. Oh my gosh, it's so smooth, the texture. And I love all those nuts and dry fruits in it. Amazing. Wow, this bread pudding tastes just like Christmas. It has all those lovely warm flavors in it. And the fruits, I hope you give this recipe a try. So hop onto my website, platingitwithwendy.com, or you can hit on the link in the description box below for the full written recipe. Thanks for watching. See you soon.